Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we will take a look at some new malicious compliance content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
First one is titled, "If you don't want to wait, you can go home." Okay. Short but sweet. A few years ago I started with a new company as a front office customer service associate. Thanks to the issues of our IT department, and our store being brand new, there were still issues with the time clock. I was also very new and had little issue following policy and rules to keep myself out of trouble since I knew our corporate asset protection person very well. I also watched her fire someone on the spot for breaking a company policy, so getting on her bad side was not on my to-do list. One day I came in about 10 minutes early and it said, "Manager override required," on the time clock. So I found the nearest CSM up front and had them page a manager on the in-store radios. Coworker. "Hey manager, Moose needs to clock in, can you come up front?" Pause. CW. Manager said that they will be about 5 minutes, but to go ahead and get started. Me. Policy says no working off the clock, so I'll go sit in the cafe and let me know when they come. CW. Seriously? Me. Yup. CW. Keys her radio. "Hey manager. Moose said they will wait for you cause they don't want to work off the clock." Pause. CW. Manager said you can get started now and they will adjust your time later, or you can go home. Me. Did they actually say that? CW. Yes. Either get started or go home. Me. Alright, have a good day. Got about 3 phone calls on my way home which I promptly ignored. The best part about it was about 2 weeks later said manager was asked to go to another store in the chain for reasons that no one really knows why about, and as far as I know doesn't work for the company anymore. When our asset protection person caught wind, they called me and said next time that happens, call them directly and it'll be handled immediately. Next one is titled, "Safety First, Feel the Burn." I was working in the oil and gas industry. My job was to do the engineering for new works and then go on site to do the job. For the sake of simplicity I'll leave all tech out. So here comes the day I get my first real job at the company, even though I had prior experience in other toys of heavy industries. I do a great work presenting how I intend to do the job. Everybody is impressed by the solutions I find. I put it down in a procedure, submit for review. Point of importance, I still holds uncompleted structural drawings, that will get modified later but order is to get the doc out as project is late. Anyways, the procedure has already all the harder stuff completed to give something to chew to the client. And the review for that will be thorough. All departments look at your procedure, including quality, safety, project, structure engineers. Now at one moment a rigger needs to install something high and use heavy tools, around 15 kiloseconds. I sketch a platform to stand on with some access stairs, send it to the drawing office with a work order cause it is unplanned costs. My boss comes back with the work order saying this is plain stupid, the operation is easy, guys are strong and used to it, and they will be able to do it. We argue a bit. I tell him at one point the guy will work besides the ladder while carrying a heavy load. I am not doing this unless he orders it. He orders it. Review goes fine, as it is critical all departments went through the procedure, including quality, safety, project, structure engineers. Safety misses it, was a good job as he stated it. Installation comes by, I tell the guy about the order, he goes silent as my boss has a good field cred. He thinks the boss is probably right. Time passes, summer comes by and passes, the client is even more unhappy. Corporate is on our ass, all installation and construction issues for phase 1 are finally solved. Point of importance, in that line of business, nothing starts as long as your procedures are not out. Field time is too expensive. My procedure had come back with no noteworthy comments. I updated the drawings, and being a second issue with only MI or comments it goes through the fast lane. fast as one tech reviewer and project manager. The first lane had all departments look at your procedure, no major comments from the customer, second procedure goes promptly out. Final stretch, yard date in sight, final safety review before customer safety review before operations. Everyone who's someone around the project is there. PM, his boss, head of HSE, my boss, his boss, whom I'll call Bloodletter. That guy is said to have had deep diving decompression issues which caused his behavior. The guy before me had several mistakes for his work, Bloodletter shredded him to pieces. Got yelled at for a continuous 10 minutes. My boss, his boss, shredded him too. My turn. I present the planned operations. One guy raises issue with the ladder and climbing with heavy tools. Bloodletter looks at me. Calmly asks why I did this. Rear legs ready to pounce. Claws out. 6 figures money loss in his eyes. The guy before had been an appetizer. His mistakes were after all hard to foresee. My boss asks me how in the duck did income up with this. I look at him, and state, I had planned a platform with access at this point, and you ordered me not to. Bloodletter pounced. The shredding lasted half an hour. Without moving, my boss was soaked despite the air conditioning making air too dry. His face was dry, hands clenched. I was jubilating each time he looked at me. Next one is titled, Parking Brake. One of the reasons my marriage works is that my husband and I have very similar opinions most of the time. One of the notable exceptions to this is the parking brake. When I learned to drive, I was taught to use the parking brake every time I parked. Once I got my license, I learned that not everyone actually does that. I made a conscious decision to continue to use the parking brake for every park. It's better to use it when it's not needed than to forget it when it is needed. Also, building the habit of taking the brake on and off means I'm less likely to end up driving around with the parking brake on and eventually needing an expensive repair. My husband only uses the parking brake when he parks on a very steep hill. Parked on any hill, he turns the steering wheel so that if the car rolls, it will roll into the curb. He actually does what a lot of people do, including my driving instructor. He turns the wheel, then lets the car roll until it's touching the curb. He claims this is extra safe. I don't think it's any safer than just turning the wheel. Tires are expensive and it's unnecessary wear and tear on them to leave them smashed up against a curb. We've come to an agree to disagree about the parking brake. He sometimes grumbles a little when he drives a car that I drove earlier and has to remember to take the brake off, but it's not really any kind of big deal. Well, my stepdaughter learned to drive. Her dad has been the main driving instructor, but, with his blessing because I'm not her actual parent, I've done some driving instruction too. The first time the emergency brake came up, we explained that her dad and I had different habits about how we use the parking brake. We told her that for simplicity while she was learning she should do it dad's way, but when she's out driving on her own she'll eventually develop her own habits. This was about a year ago. Today my stepdaughter drove and it was the first time she parked on a hill by a curb. It was a slight hill but definitely a hill. She parked by the curb and asked if she should use the parking brake. At the same time I said yes and her dad said no. He instructed her to turn the wheel and let the car roll into the curb and that was good enough. I let him finish this instruction. When we got out, though, I said that I prefer to use the emergency brake and not press the tires against the curb. I didn't say his way was wrong. I just shared that to the same parking job a different way than her dad does it. This is a normal thing we've done throughout her learning to drive. Well, I don't know. My husband must have gotten up on the wrong side of the bed, because he got a little salty, and said, maybe you should read the driver's manual and see what it says about parking. I was a little annoyed, but I was going to let it drop. However, once we got where we were headed and I had a minute, I thought I should do just that. We currently live in a different state than the one I learned to drive in, and I've never read the driver manual for this state. I have no idea what the laws or suggestions about parking brakes are. So I pulled up the state manual on my phone and looked at the section on parking. Boom. Right at the top, You should use your parking brake every time you park. In the section on hill parking, it says to turn the wheel, but doesn't say to roll your car until the tire is up against the curb. I showed this to my stepdaughter and she found it hysterical, especially since her dad did learn to drive in this state, from his dad who was a retired cop, although he also rarely uses his parking brake. My husband just rolled his eyes at me. I went on to tell my stepdaughter that the most important thing is to secure her car in some way when she parks on a hill. Her dad and I are both good drivers, and as she gets more experience she'll figure out the things that make the most sense to her. Next one is titled, "There's a Font for That." Around 20 years ago, my organization migrated from GroupWise to Outlook. Our IT department took that opportunity to also begin managing permissions on workstations, locking down most machines to basic functionality. At the time, I needed admin access on my machine to install various utilities to be able to do my job, and quickly got annoyed with needing to call IT every time I wanted to test a new piece of software for the department. Then I discovered that fonts also required admin access to install. Cue malicious compliance. Day 1. Me. Hi, I need to install, insert font name here, on my computer, but it requires admin access. Help desk. I'm happy to help you with that. What is your PC name? 5 minutes pass. You're all set. Me. Thank you. Day 2. Me. Hi, I need to install, insert font name here, on my computer, but it requires admin access. Help desk. I'm happy to help you with that. What is your PC name? 5 minutes pass. You're all set. Me. Thank you. Day 3. Me. Hi, I need to install, insert font name here, on my computer, but it requires admin access. Help desk. Me. Hello? Are you there? Help desk. Are you interested in having admin access on your machine so you can install your own fonts? Me. Sure. 20 years later, I am still granted admin access on all of my new computers. Last one is titled, "You're Too Slow." For context, I, undergrad student who commutes to uni, have been studying at home since March 2020 due to COVID and subsequently uni shutting all the campuses. Because of this, we haven't had access to the uni library, a lot of the books, journals we needed were behind paywalls online, and some primary documents that aren't online at all. Fast forward to a few weeks before this year's final exams. Uni sends out email saying the library is now open again and has bookable study spaces. I book a space so I can access the resources again to study for my exams. Get into uni no problem, sit down and begin to study, but after 10 minutes librarian walks in and comes over to me. "What are you doing here?" "I booked a study space for today. These spaces are only for people who need them." Look around the completely empty library and ask to be allowed to stay seeming as no one else is there. Librarian says I have to leave in 20 minutes. Go back a few days later, but only to borrow some books to study at home instead. As I'm going to the relevant shelves to collect my books, librarian approaches me again. "What are you doing?" "Collecting some books to borrow." "I told you you're not allowed to be here." Begins to rant about how I'm a COVID risk, whilst being right in my face, etc. I try to explain that we were told we are allowed to come and borrow books again for our exams, even show the email on my phone, and that I'm following all COVID regulations, mask, distancing, even had a quick PCR test the day before. Also note that the library is empty again, and there is nobody on the entire campus apart from the receptionist, librarian and a couple of chemistry students. Not good enough for librarian however, who tells me that I'm too slow, and that unless I run in, grab the books and get out, I shouldn't come back to the library. Cue malicious compliance. Put some joggers on, lace up my trainers, and make my way to uni to return books after my exams. Scan my ID, walk past the receptionist, put my bag down and take books out. 3, 2, 1, go. Dash through the corridors, half the lights are off because no one is on campus anymore. Up the stairs, swing the library doors open and start weaving in between the shelves. Librarian yells, "Hey!" But I don't turn to look. Get to the corner, sling the books in the returns bin and bolt back out before the librarian even gets up from behind their desk. Make my way back downstairs, grab my bag, walk calmly past the receptionist wishing them a nice day, and leave campus. Apparently the librarian went ballistic and filed a bunch of complaints, but surprisingly nothing came back to me. I've since discovered that this librarian complains about students all year, so complaints about me must have just been ignored by management. I wouldn't usually pull a stunt like this, but this year has been really hard academically and we've been largely ignored by the uni. I was just trying to study to pass my exams, so I didn't appreciate someone like this librarian being so insensitive. Thanks for listening.